So, Monica started our series last week talking about the secular world. Now, we're talking about cultivating spiritually intelligent leadership in a secular world. I gave her a rather tough topic, but you did an excellent job, Monica. The secular world, that world where even those of us who have faith or who are born within religious families or spiritual communities often lose hope, often forget that this world is created of more than just what we know by our senses. But some people choose to live in a secular world, and my mom was one of them, bless her soul. You know, I believe it if I see it. You know those people, right? If I can touch it, I know it's real. The problem with that is if you go with that idea only, you're kind of limping a little bit because you're only looking at your life and life as one-dimensional. And I'm going to talk about the different dimensions, because we're multidimensional beings, right? But we're not always aware of having a multidimensional experience, nor are we aware that we can use that free will to determine what dimension we wish to experience. So this may be a little far out of a talk, but try to stay with me. We're going to talk about the physical plane, which is the third dimension. Let's go back for a minute. Let's talk about the first dimension. The first dimension is, scientifically speaking, a line. It's just a line, right? The second dimension is more of a flat surface. So now we're talking more about a picture or a television screen. The third dimension is when we start to form and create objects. So we have a more in-depth perception. So we kind of hang out in that dimension. The third dimension is the physical realm, right? It's the material world, right? So when we identify ourselves with the material world, you know, that can sure be interesting. Ooh, we can have lots of drama in that world. We can have lots of joy and excitement and delight and pain and suffering, la, 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 right? But we're still limping, because we don't understand that there is more to life than what we see. There is more to life than what we know. And there is definitely more to life than who we are being. Right? So we get locked into a very small possibility. A very limited way of experiencing who and what life can be by means of us. And in this world, when we just hang in to the material world and identify with it, we're always sourcing our power outside, and we're trying to get something, achieve something, seek, strive, struggle to attain, because we have a deeper belief that there's not enough and there's lack. Because truly there is lack if we think this is it, right? So we've got to move within the fourth dimension. Now, the fourth dimension is when it gets really fun. Fourth dimension is the astral plane. I was listening to Wayne Dyer's tapes, or watching his movies this week, The Shift, and the other one that was released by Hay House called My Greatest Teacher. It's only a 54-minute documentary, but it is on his life, and it comes from the book that one of the last books he wrote called I Can See Clearly Now. And Hay House worked with him to make this documentary of one aspect of his life where he had that turning point. He had that, like Eckhart Tolle, that spiritual revelation, right? And so he talks about, why did I talk about that movie? The fourth dimension. I got on the astral plane a little too early, sorry, within my own self. So the astral plane it doesn't exclude the material world. So as we go up in dimensions, they include what has gone before. Very important, because often we try to escape the material world by becoming spiritual, and we think it's all going to be okay. Never will work that way. We cannot exclude anything or anyone as lesser, God is everywhere present. This intelligence is everywhere present all the time. So the astral plane is that plane where there is denseness, but there's also light, and there's an awareness of both. So there's the lower vibration and the higher vibration always happening. And like I said in the beginning, we can be kind of over here in the lower, over here in the higher. But the astral plane is the opportunity where we start to be able to have experiences. I know why I was talking about Wayne Dyer. It wasn't even Wayne Dyer, it was Ram Dass. Sorry. I've been doing a lot of movies and books this week. Who used to, in his younger day, take psychedelic drugs. As some of you may have done. And of course, as the medical profession is now backing a little bit, especially as pain medication. Why? Because it helps take our focus off the body, the pain body, right? And it helps us open up our mind to include other possibilities and a greater truth than what we're experiencing through our senses. So the astral plane is one where you can open your mind to travel. Now, you don't need drugs to do that. You can use prayer. You can use spiritual mind treatment. You can use meditation. You can use spiritual practice. You can use compassion, kindness. A heart connection will have you travel beyond your own narcissism, your own ego level, right? You need to move out of yourself, truly stand beside yourself, truly start to understand that everything you see out there is a projection of our own mind. And that can be rather trippy, right? When you start to say, oh, there's only one person in this argument. There's only one person in this divorce. There's only one person. When we're starting to ask ourselves the question, what about this Black Lives Matter issue? Which, by the way, has been on the minister's listserv for 2 weeks now. An integrative perspective, what I'm talking about today, doesn't exclude the physical plane and doesn't stop at the astral plane. Because the astral plane is still your experience of a greater truth. It's still you using your will and still you using your understanding of life to move through life with the odd little movement beyond what you know. It needs to include the fifth dimension, which many saints and sages and prophecies have said we are moving to. This is the idea of, the world's going to end. So if you can kind of just reframe that and go, we're just moving into the fifth dimension. Perhaps that's another way to hold it so that it doesn't kickstart hopelessness or fear. So the fifth dimension is also known as the heavenly plane. It's known as the spiritual dimension. It's known as where all things begin. So it's also called the miraculous plane. The astral, the fourth dimension, is called the magical plane. And I have to look to remember what the physical plane is called. See, this is what happens when you don't use your notes and you go off on a tangent. Just the physical reality of conscious being. It's the physical reality. Okay. So when we go back to the fourth dimension, when we're in the fifth dimension, we have things to work through. One of the things we have to work through is, on a very cellular soul level and a subconscious level, is that we are not separate. We cannot hang in heaven, in the heavenly dimension, where miracles are ordinaries, where we can move more easily between this idea of, I'm using my free will to allow infinite mind to use me. We move more freely in that river. But we have to really create a grounding within ourselves to see that we are not separate from anyone or anything. or that life and that intelligence behind all of life. That we call it the one mind. Well, we think with the one mind. We don't think with our brain. We think with the one mind. We're using this intelligence because it's infinite and it's everywhere. We're always thinking, not just into it, but with it. We're thinking as it. We are its expression. Right? When we think our brain is doing the work, however, we think we're very limited. And what are we limited to? What we want, what we need, what we desire, what we've experienced, what we believe. It gets to be a pretty small life. It can be a good life. But we wouldn't be here today if we didn't sense something greater that is calling us. And this is why we have these kinds of conversations. So in this fifth dimension, there is only love, right? Fear does not exist. We are unstoppable, and we do live miraculous lives. We travel by application of divine will, and we don't need to die to have this experience. Now, we talk a lot about, as we're moving our ego and our higher self together, or our humanity and our divinity together, that we have to die to get it. And I've spent many years putting white face on as a clown, which, metaphorically speaking, is the death of the persona that I know, me, Nadene, and I move into another persona. Well, in the fifth dimension, we don't move into a persona. We are it all. And we are aware of our infiniteness and our eternality and our immortality. We are energy. Okay. So what would it be like to live in your world right now knowing that? Not excluding or shying away from, as I tried to capture in the meditation, all the parts and pieces of our mind that we don't particularly like, or the aspects of us or our lives, all the places we want to change. New thought espouses, change your mind, change your life, right? We want to change our lives. But why do we want to change them? Big question. Do we want to change them because, and there's no right or wrong here as I start. Do we want to change them because we don't like them? That's fair. Do we want to change them because we think they're not working? That's fair. Do we want to change them because we believe we can be expressing in a more full way and experiencing being more alive? That's fair. So not one of those three ideas is greater or lesser than the other. They just are what they are. I always look behind, though. So if I don't like it, why don't I like it? Well, I've got a perception of it, which probably is very limited. Yes? Yeah. Because why? I'm in this situation and I'm having this experience. So based on the experience that I don't like feeling, or the thoughts that I don't like thinking, I want to change it. So I want to not do that anymore. I want to do this. But what if I could live with an integrative perspective in the fifth dimensional thinking and being, and allow this to be something miraculous? All of a sudden, whatever I could conceive as to what I would like to change it to is kind of a moot point. Because everything that I am and everything that's available to me to experience in this field of potential through this spiritual intelligence within me is here and now, if I open to it. Think of how your life would change. And I'm talking about health issues, relationship issues, money issues. It doesn't matter. Because you can't get more of what you don't have unless you can open to be more of who you are with what you have. Right? Now, I'm sure each one of you are dealing with an issue. I could lay my life on that. I have a few. Because I'm up here, I get to tell you mine. No, I'm not going to do that. You don't get to tell me yours. No, but you see my point. In one of, was in one of Wayne Dyer's movies, and I think it was The Shift, he talks about, he uses an analogy of a snake bite. And he says, no one ever died from a snake bite. They die from the venom in their system, but not from the bite itself. Right? So what's the venom in your perspective? And using that story, most people, if they were bitten by a snake, would do anything and everything to get rid of the venom, right? Starting with sucking, if you could reach it. Sorry. I don't know where my mind went there. I was thinking of a dog. All those Facebook posts with those funny poses of animals? Just too wonderful. Anyway, where was I? Venom. Yes. And so, but what if instead of trying to get rid of it and push against it, you use the venom, because venom might be judgment. Could be self-judgment, other judgment, hatred. It could be, just limited perspective on what's possible. It could be anything. So instead of trying to push it away and get rid of it, what if you open to give it space to transmute itself, because it always will? Because that's not all you are. You're spiritually intelligent. So if you open to give whatever this challenging situation is you don't like, space, if you open your mind to give yourself the space to adapt a greater belief system that has you thinking and moving more in that fifth dimensional aspect of your being, which is already present, because we're spiritual beings, right? How could life be different now? And that's what we need to know. Not how will life be different when. Now. So the venom can become your greatest teacher. So I keep telling myself, don't be so quick to get rid of the venom. So if we were living in a miraculous world, this is what we might experience. The awesome reality of living in the faith that we are in the hands of Spirit. We perceive everything as okay, even if sometimes it's unpleasant, because we know that Spirit is directing our course. Now, Spirit is us. So let me be very clear there. This is not a God outside of us directing our course by its divine will. We are all one thing, right? We see our identity as divine being unfolding. So what if we said we were, because I have used this statement and I've heard it forever in New Thought, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Well, to me, that's a very divisive statement. It promotes the experience of separation. We can think, ooh, we're more than a human being. We're spiritual beings. That's kind of cool. But having a human experience, oh yeah, this is my reality. I have to remember that. We're spiritual beings having a spiritual experience as human form. As the place that I am thinking right now, based on what I know and what I can imagine and what I'm open to receive, that's the spiritual being. That's the spiritual experience I'm having. Right? Our reliance on material and magical perceptions, third and fourth dimension, is superseded by our reliance on miraculous perceptions. We perceive others' pictures of reality as just that, their pictures, and do not take their projections personally. We realize that in many areas of our life, and especially our mission or our purpose, the walls of time-space are not a limitation. So we don't veer off our path of our calling. We may not know what it is in concrete forms, but it is something that draws us out of ourselves, draws us into a bigger possibility, puts us face to face with what we like to call synchronicity, right, or opportunity. We don't draw back from that. We realize that in many areas of our life, and especially, we live with the understanding that by remaining open and empty, the universe can manifest miracles through us. Yeah. So it's one thing to think, well, let's not mentally stand in our own way and self-sabotage ourselves. Let's make sure whatever our core belief systems and belief patterns are in our subconscious mind are in alignment with our conscious mind, and how we act and speak and present in the world is also in alignment with all of that. Okay? It's not just about that. It's about being empty. That's a whole other thing. That means being without our identity, being without our attachments, being without anything. Open and empty, being an open vessel. And what we need to do for that, to become that, is to have faith and trust in ourselves that we are more than we have experienced. We also love everyone and know that they are part of the divine whole. We are grateful to be alive, not just managing, not just getting through the day, but being alive. We see our vision of heaven on earth manifesting. And we share our vision, our cosmic identity and insights freely and naturally, knowing miracles are given. Not too bad a world to live in. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote an essay called Self-Reliance. It's one of my favorites. There's also been a lot of discussion on the ministerial listserv lately about community and building community. The World Day of Service, which is upon us. And one of the ministers said, self-reliance to me means not following in lockstep agreement just because some people know how to articulate concepts better or have a bigger voice or have more authority. Self-reliance is not necessarily rugged individualism, as opposed to bringing community together. Science of Mind gives humanity the tools and the principles to think for oneself and then attract others who think for themselves. And therein lies the freedom of being genuine and authentic and living a genuine and authentic life and feeling therefore alive. Therein lies being self-reliant, an opportunity to live with an integrative perspective and cultivate that spiritually intelligence, or that spiritually intelligent leader that it lives within you in this secular world. I saw something else on Facebook. You might have seen it. It's called Shift Happens. Did you see the pyramid? And I'm going to read it to you both ways because I think that's important. Okay, so look at the pyramid, like how we experience most authority and systems work in our life, right? Top down. Okay. So, but we're going to start at the bottom. Shift happens, which means you too can climb. And the next step is asleep. So this is our ascending consciousness. So we realize it happens, but then we fall asleep and we say, I don't want to know anything about this shift. The next level is, I'm curious, what is this shift? And the next level is waking up, right? I have a lot of shift. The next is being awake. I am seeing my own shift. And then we reach that all-loving, sought-after state, enlightenment. We get to help others with their shift. And finally, we become the Ascendant Master. Holy shift! It's all perfect. Right? So, fifth dimension, you can look at it the other way. Ascendant Master. Holy shift, it's all perfect. And start from there. Because you will always do the spiral. Because you're always evolving, right? There's no end goal. I thought that was really fun. So how do we start reframing? How do we start moving our ego and integrate our ego with our divine self? Well, I recently took a training in spiritual intelligence. There is such a thing. There's a book called Spiritual Intelligence, 21 Keys to Spiritual Intelligence, SQ21. And in that training, they have this process that I thought I'd bring and share with you today. Now, it's probably something that you already do or have done before, but it may give you some different insight. First of all, we have to stop. Whatever's going on in our life, in our mind, in our experience. We need to breathe and focus on our breath to come into present mind awareness, present moment awareness. At that very point where we feel, as we're breathing, that we're letting go, we can start to release our attention and our focus on the swirlingness of this third dimension, this physical world. We ask for inner guidance. Who do we ask? Ourselves. We go inward. Right? As we're asking, we just observe, as we're breathing, we're asking for inner guidance, we just observe our thoughts, our emotions, and our body sensations. And why is that important? Because it helps ground us into remembering the truth is within us, it's not without us. So we can't exclude that physical sensation in order to get the answer. It comes through us. In your flesh shall you know me. Okay? And then we identify our ego concerns. Okay? So we're present, we're experiencing it on a physical and emotional level, we're open for guidance, and then we say, so what are these ego concerns of mine? So an example is, something might be happening like I'm concerned he's trying to make me look bad, And so that might correspond to I have a security issue. So that might be my ego button right there. I don't feel secure, right? So you identify your ego concerns, but you don't suppress it or judge it. You don't suppress it or judge it. And when you give it the space, this wonderful ego that teaches us so much, the concerns will either fade away or they will partner in spiritual intelligence in a useful way. Okay. Then you can look even deeper for a root mental cause. So if I'm not feeling secure, what do I really believe that's causing my belief in being insecure? So that means that belief is not the root. I'm insecure, but that's not my root belief. There's something under that. And then as you start to find that, you could do it through contemplation, you could do it through meditation and journaling. When you find that, then you go deeper. When you find that, you go deeper. When you find that, you go deeper. It's like a rabbit hole, friends, And what you're going to find when you hit rock bottom is often a belief in rejection, separation, death, as such, death, separation. Then you get to reframe it. You get to see it newly by adding more data, which could be factual, could be emotional. You could be using your own intuitive sense. You could be opening up to new avenues, new resources. You bring more in. You bring more in. So that's a way. That's a way that you can get out of this place that you're feeling so gripped by and move into an integrative perspective in life, or that fifth dimensional miraculous way of living. Here's a few more things you can do. You can write a story about what could cause someone to act in a way that had you separate yourselves out from them. You could think more deeply about the commonality of your suffering with another, which is empathy. And you could think more deeply about the interconnectedness of all of life. So I'm going to leave you with two questions today. One is, can you hold two conflicting things as simultaneously true? Now we're talking about an integrative perspective. So what that means is we have to explore and practice living both subjectively in this world of matter, this physical world, and live objectively in this physical world, just as we learn to live more subjectively in the astral plane and the heavenly spiritual dimension. Because in the spiritual dimension, it's all subjective. It's universal subjectivity. Okay? So that question again, can we hold two conflicting things as simultaneously true? I'll give you a really easy example. There's never enough time. There's always enough time. Can both be true? Yeah. That's an integrative perspective. Question number 2. Before I ask for guidance or claim my truth, have I done my work to prepare to receive? Before I ask for guidance or claim my truth, which is often what we say instead of ask, we say claim. Have I done my work to prepare to receive? Because it does us no good. We're very powerful. We co-create everything. To be aware of what we want to co-create, to even be aware to let this God mind have an open and empty channel to create through, if at that moment of download, we're going to go, don't deserve it, not worth it, no, not now, not ready, right? So those are the two questions. Can you live with those? Can I hold two conflicting things as simultaneously true? And before I claim my truth, have I done my work to prepare to receive? So just remember that this fifth dimension that we are all living in now, as we open to become aware of it, excludes nothing. We don't transcend life by getting away from it, by minimalizing it, by disregarding it. We honor everything and everyone, starting with ourselves, as sacred, as whole, and as complete, just the way we are. And so it is.